Hello, and welcome to episode 1.5 of the Every 2 Week Show. For those of you returning to the program, this is Montana, not Wyoming. This is Wyoming. If this seems random to you, check out episode 1 and work your way forward. And yes, you heard me correctly when I said episode 1.5. This is a very special rendition of the Every 2 Week Show. With Newman Day quite literally around the corner, we felt it was necessary to discuss a controversial topic: liver cirrhosis. I'm kidding, but we are going to talk about booze. As many of you know, Paul Newman despised our tradition and publicly asked that we stop consuming 24 beers in his honor. In 1987, Newman sent a letter to then Bates College president Thomas Reynolds, which read, "I was surprised to learn that a day which was held in my honor was actually an excuse for drunkenness and disregard for property, disrespect for people, and deeds of questionable character." But does 24 beers have to equate to anarchy? According to recent actions by the town of Lewiston, any amount of beer does. But is this draconian view of drinking at college fair? To find out, we have to go all the way back to 2015, when the current seniors were just wee first years. Our faces were fresh, and our eyes were wide from hope and cocaine. Unbeknownst to the class of 2019, the party culture at Bates had just taken a terrible torpedo to the stern. 2 alcohol-based traditions, Throwback Night and Trick or Drink, were canceled abruptly. While this anger trickled down to the new first years, their anger was hollow. A tradition none of us had ever participated in was banned. Regardless, college was still the first place we were truly allowed to cut loose without the supervision of Eugene Levy from the American Pie franchise. If you don't know who Eugene Levy is, please educate yourself on early 2000 pop culture references. We're going to be doing a lot more references on this show. After our parents had left us alone, we quickly began to express ourselves as degenerates. Groups of newly acquired friends would choose from which house seemed the most likely to let in a group of incapacitated first years. The parties were sweaty and crowded, but generally welcoming and even moderately fun. It wasn't quite Animal House, but it was enough to be termed a party, or in the words of Thomas Cub, a soiree. And, truth be told, security had our backs in 2015. If a call about a party was dialed to the 911 switchboard, it was redirected to campus security. But as sophomore year rolled around, security became a more intrusive presence on campus. Security was making appearances at social gatherings held by students of legal drinking age well before quiet hours. Consequently, even more people took solace by rushing off campus. Neighborhoods began to swell with drunk and frustrated college students. Cups and cans covered lawns, bushes and shrubs were dying at alarming rates due to over-urination, and chiefly, groups that would normally pass through were now loudly loitering outside. If this increase in bystander craziness was noticeable to the student body, then it was glaringly apparent to the townspeople who lived in these areas. And ultimately, it was the accumulation of lasting damage to properties and neighborhoods that broke the camel's liver. In 2017, the town held several meetings to address the issue of destructive and obnoxious students. These hearings were held in the summer, when the students who were being addressed were not present to defend themselves, which was somewhat bullshit, but a well-played political move. The town passed several ordinances with the aim of neutralizing off-campus party culture. When the students returned to campus, they were blindsided harder than Jared Goff. The ordinances included 12 stipulations for police intervention, some of the terms intentionally vague. For example, conduct or condition that threatens injury, inconvenience, or alarm to persons or damage to property is now a potential citation. Another term targeted outdoor urination or defecation in a public place. You see, my problem with that is that public urination and defecation carry the same weight. In what world are those acts comparable? But in all seriousness, the enactment of these ordinances brought on hard times for the students. Noise complaints now went through to the police. Expensive fines were doled out. Summons were issued. Things were shitty. Consequently, student parties moved back on campus. But the police followed us there too. Here's a first-hand account describing a police interaction on campus.
It was my junior year at Bates College, and I believe it was the first Saturday back on campus. There was a little get-together in Parsons, and I was obviously drinking. Anyways, the fire alarm went off, so the fire department came and told everyone to go outside. So I went out to the back door with my beer in my hand. At this point, I was in the backyard of Parsons, and I walked on over to the backyard of Herrick House, which is technically Bates' property. Out of nowhere, 2 police officers jumped out of the bushes and started asking me questions. "Sir, is that a beer in your hand?" I said yes. "Are you 21 or older?" I said no, sir. Then they asked me to walk on over to the nearest parking lot, which was about 20 yards away. From there, they wrote me a citation, and from that point on, I had to get a lawyer, go to court, and after months of this process, I was eventually exonerated. The police had no jurisdiction on Bates' property, so they took me to the street and wrote me up there.
Chilling. Ultimately, trust between the students and administration eroded. Wild conspiracy theories regarding the removal of off-campus housing started to fly around. It didn't help that a new parking ban was simultaneously implemented, but that's an issue for another episode. We wondered how things got this bad. Naturally, an us versus them mentality was established, and disdain for the police manifested itself in different ways across the student body. Anytime students saw the police cruising by, they felt a pang of guilt, fear, and anger. One student lit himself on fire in protest. As the weeks wore on, the police softened, but the off-campus culture as we knew it was dead. But what led us to this point? As we said in the beginning of the episode, off-campus was hugely popular and accepted back in 2015, which is bizarre if you really think about it. Why would hordes of students travel through the freezing Maine winters to party in a dingy and sweaty shack? Why wouldn't they take advantage of the spaces they lived in, partying in the large common rooms and cutting out the need to travel? In short, it was because of security. By 2016, it was commonplace for security to check in on a room simply for playing loud music. If they saw the unholy beer, the party was over and everyone was written up. God forbid they saw hard alcohol, the beverage solely responsible for the decline of Western civilization. These hardline tactics progressively pushed us further and further off campus. So, who is to blame for the current state of affairs? Impulsively, you might say President Spencer, but maybe that's not fair. Perhaps it was the students who ignored the lives of their neighbors and partied without a care. Perhaps it was the town who created laws targeting the student body without representation from those very students. Perhaps it was the police who used their powers to the limit of the law. Or perhaps it was the school itself for not addressing the issue of heavy-handed security earlier. The answer is most likely F, all of the above. Each group contributed to making the situation worse, and now we're in a particularly intense standoff. So, what is the solution? In truth, I don't know. However, in recent years, there has been a personnel and policy change. Thanks to the appointment of Doug, security is no longer such an insidious force. Indeed, they even host parties in the same places they used to patrol. So, who do we take arms against? The answer might be no one. The relationship between the town and student body took a massive hit and is going to need some time to rebuild and heal. In the meantime, it's important that we students convey the ability to have a good time responsibly. That's why we ask this Newman Day be sponsored by a promise. A promise to drink 24 beers without losing regard for people or their property. a promise to end the public urination and please, for the love of God, defecation, and a promise to avoid any other conduct or condition that threatens injury, inconvenience, or alarm to persons or damage to property while still consuming 24 beers. Only if you're 21 years or older, of course. Thank you for tuning in to this special edition of the Every 2 Week Show. Anyway, we have a fantastic episode coming out next week. Until then, we will miss you, and dobroj noci.
Right, get out of here.